right, it's been a while since I came on live. So, just all the things. We had a snow day yesterday. And I don't know, I feel like the only people who get more excited about a snow day than kids are teachers. So, we're like, yes, snow day. So, today I want to talk to you about kind of what causes low self esteem on a deeper level and how do we overcome it, right? And so we're just going to jump right into it. And when we think about low self-esteem, basically self-esteem, the way I explained it to my sixth graders, is like the way you see or feel about yourself. And so when we think about low self-esteem, first I want to say that it can vary and it can change depending on what activity you're doing or where, tech things, what activity you're doing or whatever it is you're working on. So like you might have a really high self-esteem in one area and a really low self-esteem in another, right? So for me, like when I was a kid, anytime it was like competitive sports or PE, right? Like my self-esteem would be like and just plummet. So let's talk about what causes it. And some of those things, really, a lot of it comes from the programming that we were given as kids. Because as kids, one, we're very emotional. We have less emotional regulation, like those skills we haven't developed quite yet. And we were very impressionable. And what I've learned is that our emotions and our memories are very connected. So like the more emotional we are, the more we remember that specific incident, right? So the things that cause us a lot of emotion, we tend to remember. I mean, obviously it's a bell curve and it gets to a point where if it's too emotional or like very, very traumatic, then sometimes we cannot remember it. But that we're not talking about that intense of emotion, right? And so a lot of times it's just little sayings or little things that people said to us or we did or we felt when we were kids that created a belief system in us that caused low self-esteem. And it's not that anyone was like ill-intentioned, right? I don't think that most of the time, even as a parent myself talking to my own kids, it's not the intention of like, oh, I'm going to try to lower your self-esteem, right? If a teacher says like you're just not very artistic, then we take that to heart. And I'm sure a lot of times it's not like a teacher's like, oh, I'm trying to ruin your creative spirit, right? By saying like, oh, is that a cow? And you're like, no, it's a dog. Thanks. Right? Now I'm crushed and I feel like I'm not artistic. So a lot of times it's our emotions as children, our memories attached to those emotions, and then creating belief systems, or our brain actually programs beliefs around that. And that's what can really trigger having a lower self-esteem, is those things working, like kind of connecting, right? And like I said, that's why it can be in one area and not another, because if you feel really successful in another area and you have a lot of confidence and you've had a lot of practice and you feel like you're really good in that area, then you're probably going to have a higher self-esteem. So how do we overcome it in those areas where we might feel like we have very low self-esteem? And for some of us, we might be feeling like that's all aspects of life right now, right? Like I'm just failing left and right. I can't keep up with everything, especially as moms when we're like trying to juggle it all, right? Like I just can't keep up. I'm forgetting appointments and my to-do list is never done. And I forgot to switch the laundry for the third time again. And now I have to rewash it again. And then that really can, like, the pressure just builds and builds and builds. And as it does it, it just like our self-esteem, like just it's smaller and smaller and smaller. So how can we overcome that? First is really digging deeper into what our beliefs are in specific areas. Like if you know that your low self esteem is in one specific area of your life, maybe it's around health and wellness, or maybe it's around your career or your job, or maybe it's around your relationship with other people. Then we can pinpoint and really think about what are my beliefs around that. Giving yourself like 5-10 minutes even to just like sit in quiet thought and journal. And a lot of times I find those belief systems just arise if I allow my inner self to express that. Right? Allow my inner child to actually express what those beliefs are. So like being able to recognize those beliefs. I'm just looking at my notes here. If you see me looking down. Reconsolidating our memories. Right. And so I'm not an expert on this, and I'm definitely like not a therapist or anything like that. I'm a teacher. Most of what I've learned is either I've read it on my own or I've learned it like teaching social emotional learning to children. Right. And so like memory reconsolidation, from what I understand, is like every time we pull up a new memory, it kind of attaches to, it builds upon each other. Right. And so we can look at memories and we can think back on them and they can shift. Okay, so being able to identify where is this belief system coming from, what memories are attached to it, and are those memories even true of who you are? Or was that just something that somebody said and they weren't thinking it through? And then developing positive thinking patterns. Right. So when we have low like feelings about ourselves in certain areas, it's really important that we're able to flip the script and have positive thinking or affirmations around that area, because that's what's going to reprogram our brain in that area. Right. So it's not enough to just say, I don't believe that about myself anymore, cancel, clear, delete, cross that out. But what are we replacing it with? So it's really important that we replace it with something positive. And so we can take some of those things. I mean, obviously, those are just, there's more solutions than that. Those are some ways that I have found have been really helpful. And this is kind of around what aroma freedom does, right? Is it takes a goal or a situation that maybe we're not feeling so great about, and we're able to break it down into that emotional memory body complex, thinking complex, break it all apart. And then we replace it with those positive affirmations so that we can move forward and raise our confidence and our self-esteem in that specific area. So I really heavily depend on aroma freedom technique when I'm feeling like really down and hard about myself in a certain area. And so you can do all of these things separately, but I just find that like aroma freedom is nice because it takes all of it and combines it into just one like hour and a half long session. And so I'm actually doing a group AFT this month. If you're watching live on March 19th, if you're catching a recording, March 19th, 2023. Of course, it's always, I just kind of keep it in there. So there's always replays available in my group, Alpha Abundance. So if you want to hop in on that, or you're curious about aroma freedom and you're like, what does that entail? The first session is like a group session, and it's all about that introduction, like, what is this? And we work through it. So we go a little bit slower the first time so you can figure out all the ins and outs. And then each month after that, it goes a little bit faster. So I put the link to the description in the description of this video. If you just want to check that out and learn more about that community. Right? I also have a free Facebook community. The link's in there as well. So let me know if there's a specific area, like feel free to put it in the chat or anything if you have any questions, or if you have suggestions like, oh, I really want you to dig deeper in that. I always love that feedback as well. Otherwise, I will let you guys go. You have the best day, and we'll chat